Ever since my brother Damien was born, I sensed something terribly wrong. Initially, I thought it was the standard sibling rivalry, a mix of jealousy and the awkward adjustment to a new member in the family. But as the years rolled by, it became evident that Damien was far from standard. From the get-go, he was a violent child, little things at first, biting and hair-pulling in preschool. But each act was accompanied by a chilling glint in his eye. It wasn't child's play, it was true cruelty. His expulsion from preschool was the first domino to fall in a chain of disturbing events. Neighborhood animals began to disappear, and we even had to rehome our family cat, Whiskers, who was visibly terrified of Damien. Animals just seemed to instinctively know what I had suspected all along. There was something inherently evil about my little brother. By the time I turned 17, my feelings towards him have shifted from suspicion to pure, unabated loathing. To say I hated him would be an understatement. I was in dread of him. The ticking time bomb of his escalating violence kept me on perpetual edge. But my parents, blinded either by denial or misplaced optimism, insisted we spend time together. Their hopes for family harmony led us to those ill-fated woods, the day I thought I had finally become free from the nightmare that was Damien. We stumbled upon an old, run-down cottage deep in the woods. The wooden slats were rotted. The roof sagged ominously. Seizing the opportunity for chaos, Damien broke in. From my vantage point outside a window, I saw him lighting a piece of paper on fire and tossing it onto a stack of old newspapers. The room ignited instantly. "Damien, what are you doing? Get out now!" I yelled. But as he turned to leave, an old rotten floorboard gave away beneath his foot, his leg plunging through the floor. I could see him struggle to free himself. "I'm stuck," he yelled, howling in pain and fear. For the first time in my life, I saw terror eclipse the malevolence in his eyes. "Walter, help me fast!" he cried. I began to move. Instinct compelled me to save him. But then something stopped me. Visions of a life without Damien flashed through my mind. No more walking on eggshells, no more dread of what horror he'd commit next. The faces of people he might hurt in the future filled my vision. The weight of that reality held me frozen for a heartbeat. And that was all it took. I still remember the look in his eyes when he saw me turn away from the growing inferno, a look of shock mixed with fear. I could hear his screams fading away in the distance as I ran, leaving him to the fire. I arrived home panting and told my parents he had gotten lost. Despite the massive search that followed, no trace of him was ever found. It's as if the earth swallowed him whole. The fire made local news, but there were no reports of any remains discovered. Still, I doubted he had survived. The cabin was a tinderbox, and it lit up fast. As the years rolled on, my parents seemed to surrender to a quiet sense of relief, a burden lifted in the absence of Damien. I moved on too. I went to college, fell in love with Alyssa, got married and had kids, Lily, Noah. I built a life I never dared to dream of, all on the foundation of a haunting memory that grew fainter as the years went by. But 15 years later, a letter arrived in the mail, and it read as follows. "From me you have stolen, but now it's my play. You'll wish you had perished with me that day. In shadows and darkness my vengeance will creep, so bid your good nights, but you'll get no sleep." I felt sick to my stomach. The room closed in around me, and the life I had built suddenly felt as fragile as a house of cards, teetering on the brink of collapse. It was signed simply D, and so it began. The letter was just the beginning. Alyssa could tell something was wrong, but she must have thought it was work stress. How could I tell her that the brother I had basically tried to murder had come back? Then Lily, our youngest, came home one day, her face flushed with excitement. "Daddy, I met my uncle today near the school. He was really nice, but he looks weird." Burn scars, I thought to myself, my stomach churning. "What did he say, sweetie?" "He said to ask you about the fire," Lily answered, her young eyes filled with innocent curiosity. It was definitely him. As the days turned into weeks, the harassment escalated. Letters and emails filled with veiled threats and sinister messages appeared frequently. I received phone calls from untraceable numbers. No words, just the disconcerting sound of heavy breathing or distant crying. The tension in the house growing thicker every day. Alyssa was worried, but I still couldn't reveal my awful secret. I went to the police, providing letters, emails, and details of the creepy phone calls, but they needed concrete evidence, and so I delved into the depths of the internet. Weeks of searching led me to a forum discussion on a rash of local arsons. My eyes widened as I read an account of an old church burning down about 200 miles away. Multiple victims had perished, unable to escape the flames. Witnesses claimed they saw a man, his face disfigured with burn scars, watching the scene with a perverse kind of satisfaction. Is this what Damien has become? I wondered, my heart sinking. The next night I was home alone researching Damien when the power suddenly went out. The house fell into darkness. My phone buzzed. A notification from the security app. Our front camera was offline. Then came a loud, jarring pounding on the front door. I grabbed a baseball bat and rushed downstairs. By the time I reached the door, the pounding had stopped. I cautiously opened it, only to find a letter pinned to the front door. It read as follows. You took all I had, but now it's your turn. Soon you'll wish for the fire, you'll yearn. Sleep with one eye open, my brother so dear, for the flames of my vengeance are drawing near. The walls of my life were not just closing in, they were collapsing. Damien was back, and he was just getting started. From that point, my work started to suffer. Deadlines missed, projects delayed. With little to no sleep, my productivity was the least of my concerns. My family needed me, but I was lost in my own paranoia. My mind became a maze of fear, each turn a possibility of Damien lurking in the shadows. Alyssa, patient as ever, could see something was tearing me apart, but had no idea what. Then one fateful day, I came home to find Alyssa sitting on the couch, a letter laid out in front of her. Walter, this letter was in the mailbox today. Care to explain? Her voice shook. I read the letter, each word a knife twisting deeper. Damien had written to Alyssa, revealing my dark secret. He claimed that she and the kids would be safe, but only if she left me and severed all ties, forgetting I ever existed. In a torrent of emotion, I confessed everything, tears streaming down my face as I recounted the horror that was my childhood with Damien. Alyssa looked at me in disbelief and horror, her eyes searching for some kind of explanation that could make this all go away. I have to think, Walter. I'm taking the kids and going to my mom's. She left that night, and the void that she and the kids left behind seemed to swallow the house whole. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my best friend Todd went missing. Todd had been with me since the old days, back when Damien was just a dark cloud hovering over my life. He was the only one who knew the entire story. The only one who believed me when I said my little brother was a monster. The only one who knew what I had done to him. That night as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed, a FaceTime call. Bracing myself for another round of Damien's taunting, I picked up. But what I saw was far worse. It was Todd, his face bruised and battered, his eyes brimming with terror. Walter, you've got to help me, he stammered. It's Damien. He's got me here. I think he's going to burn me alive. Then came a chilling voice from the background, singing a horrifying rhyme. Fire, fire on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Crackling, dancing, eating wood, doing all the things it should. Damien then stepped into view, his face with a labyrinth of burn scars twisted and contorted into a visage of pure malevolence. Hello, dear brother. Ready for tonight's pay-per-view special? He cackled with an unsettling glee, pulling out a bottle of lighter fluid and spraying it all over Todd, who was sobbing uncontrollably. Damien held the match, drawing closer to the camera. His eyes locked onto mine. He started another rhyme, his voice a chilling melody that resonated with malevolent joy. A flicker of a match, a thrill to the core. Burning Todd alive, oh, it won't be a bore. He screams and he pleads, but it's music to me. A symphony of pain, oh, how lovely it will be. And with that, he struck the match and tossed it, Todd's final screams piercing through the phone speaker as he was engulfed in flames. Damien's laughter was the last thing I heard before the screen went dark. I was left with the haunting emptiness of the room, and the realization that Damien's vengeful spree was far from over, and that he was drawing ever closer to destroying everything I loved and cared for. It seems he wouldn't be satisfied until my life was in complete ruins. Then the next day, I got a call. It was Alyssa. Her voice shook as she spoke. Walter, I received a letter today. It's from him. From Damien. What does it say? He's bragging, gloating about what he's done to you. And he asked me a question, whether I'll stand by your side. And he wrote this rhyme. She hesitated before continuing. Come join me, dear Alyssa, a family barbecue, where the flames dance high and bonds are renewed. Just us and the kids, a thing long overdue. For Walter once tried to roast me. Perhaps I'll roast you too. I felt sick to my stomach. Alyssa, you can't come back. It's not safe. She sighed, her voice tinged with a mixture of relief and despair. I wasn't planning to, Walter. This is the last straw. For the safety of our children, we can't be a part of your life, not until this is over. I understood. It crushed me, but I understood. "Keep them safe, Alyssa, please." "I will," she responded. After hanging up, another email notification flashed on my screen. Damien again, with another poem. "Todd was a spark, but you're my wildfire. Ruining you is my ultimate desire. I'll burn all you love, I'll turn it to ash, till you're all alone with nowhere to dash." It was then that I realized Damien would never stop. Not ever. He would continue to kill, to burn, to destroy, all in the name of this twisted idea of justice. He had warned me. I was the main event, and everyone I knew or loved was just the opening act. And worst of all, he was still out there. A psychotic pyromaniac serial killer, committed to ensuring my life remained a living hell. There was no end in sight, and that was the most terrifying realization of all. I moved far away from the life I once knew. My friends were either gone or too scared to associate with me. Alyssa was living a separate life, and my children were growing up without me, which under the circumstances seemed like the lesser evil. I bought an old stone house isolated in the mountains, far removed from civilization, a self-imposed exile from the world, but not from my own mind. As it turns out, solitude is a poor companion when you're running from your own thoughts. My thoughts were consumed with the creeping dread that Damien could find me someday. Would he? Or was he content with the ruins of my life he'd left in his wake? I spent my nights staring into my stone fireplace, pondering the flames as they danced and crackled. A controlled fire, contained, unlike the chaotic, destructive force that was my brother. Each day is marked by a routine of double-checking locks on doors, triple-checking windows, and an almost ritualistic inspection of every nook and cranny of this aged structure. It's as if I'm expecting Damien to materialize out of thin air, matchstick in hand. I've turned into a nervous wreck, my senses heightened to an excruciating degree. The hum of the fridge, the rustle of leaves outside, they all set my heart racing. I used to think that insomnia was just a term tossed around loosely, but now I know. I can't remember the last time I had a full night's sleep. Each time I close my eyes, I see fire. I feel heat, and I see Damien's twisted smile tossing the match onto Todd. Just when I thought I'd reached my limits, an email arrived. It was from an anonymous sender, but I knew who it was from as soon as I read the subject line. "Sweet dreams, Walter," and another poem. "Though you search for solace and perhaps some relief, remember, dear Walter, you'll get no sleep. For in every shadow and in each night's deep awaits the horror that makes brave men weep." It was signed D. I stared at the screen, paralyzed. It was as if Damien had crawled into my mind and articulated my worst fears, just to remind me he's still out there, that he can reach me wherever I hide, even in my sleepless sanctuary. This is my life now, a trembling, paranoid shell of a man, waiting for the next email, the next sign that will affirm my deepest fears. I exist in this stone house, my fortress and my prison, a place where I continue to survive, but not live. In this relentless cycle of dread, I've come to understand that while I might be miles away from the monster, the true horror resides in the anticipation, the waiting, and the sleepless nights that stretch on without end. Walter.